Denmark is a tiny country in northern Europe, but its mainland size hides the true size of Denmark. Because while the country itself is about half the size of the US state of Maine, it balloons to the 12th largest country in the world when you factor in its distant territories. So what are these territories, and why aren't they better known as part of Denmark? To answer that question, we have to first start with the geography of Denmark. When you picture Denmark, you probably first think of the bustling city of Copenhagen. You may also think of large flat islands with tranquil villages in an otherwise pretty cold and rainy region of the world. This is a country celebrated for its high quality of life and a charming if modest footprint on the European continent. Indeed, mainland Denmark, comprising the Jutland Peninsula and an archipelago of over 400 islands, with Zealand, Funen, and Land being among the largest, covers an area of just about 43,000 square km, and its terrain is largely flat, shaped by ancient glaciers with gentle rolling plains, fertile agricultural lands, and a significant coastline stretching thousands of km. In fact, the highest natural point, Mahøj, barely reaches 170 meters above sea level, reinforcing the perception of a geographically unassuming nation. But this is just the mainland, a tiny fraction of Denmark's true geographic size. So, let's expand out to the next part of Denmark's real size, the Faroe Islands. The Faroe Islands are a collection of 18 rugged volcanic islands located far to the northwest, in the North Atlantic, about halfway between Iceland and Norway. And unlike Denmark itself, these islands are dramatic with incredible sea cliffs, deep fjords, and a landscape dominated by basaltic lava flows. While their total land area is only about 1,400 square km, a small addition to Denmark itself, they add a significant and distinct geography to the Danish realm. You see, the Faroes boast a wild, untamed beauty shaped by millennia of volcanic activity and glacial erosion, offering a glimpse into a very different Nordic landscape. Here, the highest point, named Fault Summit in English, rises to 880 meters, a true peak compared to Denmark's gentle hills, but still pretty small on the global scale. Of course, the Faroes are just a relatively small series of islands, nowhere near big enough to make Denmark one of the largest countries in the world. But what if it also owned the largest island in the world? Going even further northwest across vast stretches of the North Atlantic, and over Iceland lies Greenland, the monumental ice-covered island that utterly transforms Denmark's geographic standing. Greenland is an island of truly staggering proportions, covering an immense area of over 2.1 million square km. To put that in perspective, Greenland alone is roughly 50 times the size of mainland Denmark. Its physical geography is dominated by the second largest ice cap in the world, a colossal sheet of ice averaging 1,500 meters thick and in some places reaching an incredible 4,300 meters. This vast ice cap obscures almost 80% of the island's surface, leaving only a narrow mountainous ice-free coastal strip where life and settlements cling to the rugged terrain. The highest point, Gunjornfeld, an imposing peak in the eastern coastal range, stands at 3,694 meters, a testament to the island's raw, untamed nature. From its dramatic fjords carved by ancient glaciers to its active ice sheets constantly calving massive icebergs into the surrounding Arctic waters, Greenland is a land of extreme beauty and formidable scale. So now you know how big Denmark truly is. But then the question becomes, how did Denmark acquire such vast and distant territories if it's so small itself? Denmark's geography is much more expansive than many people realize, making it a fascinating subject to explore. And as a content creator who focuses on telling stories through geography and history, I need visual elements to help me explain complex topics. To understand Denmark's present-day geographic expanse, we have to go back to the early medieval period and the rise of the North's influence across the North Atlantic. This was arguably the period of time when Nordic influence on the world was at its height, mostly because the Vikings were explorers and expansionists during a time when the rest of Europe was much less interested in the world. Now, despite its current stewardship, the Faroe Islands and Greenland were initially settled by Norsemen primarily from Norway and Iceland, not the Danes. The Faroe Islands, uninhabited before the 9th century, were colonized by Norwegian Vikings seeking new lands. Greenland, famously explored and named by Eric the Red around 985 CE, after his exile from Iceland, saw the establishment of Norse settlements that persisted for centuries, albeit facing formidable environmental challenges. These settlements maintained ties with their Scandinavian homelands, eventually following under the loose suzerainty of the Norwegian crown. The crucial turning point for Denmark's future dominion came in 1380 with the formation of the Dano-Norwegian Union. This union occurred when Olaf II of Denmark inherited the Kingdom of Norway, becoming Olaf IV of Norway. This effectively merged the two crowns under a single monarch, and with Norway came its overseas possessions and colonies, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland, while the Kalmar Union, a broader union of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, would form in 1397. Sweden eventually broke away, leaving Denmark and Norway in a more enduring, albeit increasingly Danish-dominated union that would last until 1814. Throughout these centuries, while Norway itself maintained a degree of autonomy, its overseas territories became increasingly administered from Copenhagen as the North. Settlements in Greenland faded by the 1400s due to a combination of climate change, dwindling resources, and perhaps conflicts with the indigenous Inuit. European contact with the Greenland colonies was lost, however. The Danish-Norwegian crown never relinquished its claim to the vast island. In the early 1700s, a renewed interest in Greenland emerged, driven by a missionary zeal and the prospect of trade. In 1721, the Norwegian missionary Hans E. God, with the support of the Dano-Norwegian king, embarked on an expedition to find the lost North settlement and convert the native Ainu. This marked the beginning of modern Danish colonization of Greenland, establishing trading posts and missions that solidified Danish control over the entire island, often isolating it from the outside world. But the moment that cemented the Faroe Islands and Greenland firmly within the Danish realm occurred in the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars. You see, Norway had allied with Napoleon, a decision that proved disastrous. Following Napoleon's defeat, the victorious powers, particularly Sweden and Great Britain, sought to redraw the map of Northern Europe. The Treaty of Kiel, signed on January 14, 1814, was a harsh blow to Denmark. In this treaty, Denmark was forced to cede Norway to Sweden. However, and critically, the treaty explicitly stipulated that Norway's ancient dependencies, the Faroe Islands, Iceland, and Greenland, would remain with Denmark. This was largely due to British strategic interests, as they did not wish to see Sweden's power in the North Atlantic grow excessively. It was more advantageous for Britain to keep the territories, which were deemed mostly worthless at the time, with a weakened and struggling Denmark. Thus, a historic twist of fate combined with centuries of inherited claims and strategic geopolitical considerations meant that while Denmark lost its direct union with Norway, it retained the vast distant territories that were founded by Norway. The Faroe Islands, already integral to the Danish realm, continued under Danish administration. Greenland, once a distant, vaguely claimed territory, became an undisputed Danish possession, formally integrated into the Danish state as a colony. From that point forward, Denmark's responsibility for these far-flung lands was firmly established, but they haven't always been the easiest to manage, especially from such a small and distant mainland country. The Kingdom of Denmark, a phrase often heard but seldom fully appreciated, refers to a unique constitutional arrangement that unites three distinct geographic and cultural entities: Denmark proper, the Faroe Islands, and Greenland. While mainland Denmark operates as a highly developed modern European country, its relationship with its North Atlantic territories is a nuanced system of direct sovereignty, with extensive self-governance. In other words, it's a very delicate tightrope that Denmark tries to manage. At the heart of this arrangement is the Danish Constitution of 1953, which defines Denmark as a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system. The monarch, currently King Frederik I, serves as the ceremonial head of state, while real political power rests with the Danish parliament led by a prime minister. This makes Denmark a unitary state, but with significant devolution of powers to its regions and municipalities, and crucially to its self-governing territories, the Faroe Islands and Greenland. The Faroe Islands were granted home rule in 1948, followed by Greenland in 1979. These arrangements weren't merely administrative decentralization. They represented a significant transfer of legislative and executive authority from Copenhagen to Tórshavn, the capital of the Faroe Islands, and Nuuk, the capital of Greenland. Because of this, both the Faroe Islands and Greenland have their own democratically elected parliaments and their own governments. Under these self-government acts, the Faroe and Greenlandic authorities have assumed responsibility for a wide array of domestic affairs. This includes, but is not limited to, local government, taxation, public services like education and healthcare, social welfare, housing, environmental protection, and crucial to their economies, fisheries. They can enact their own laws in these areas which carry the same legal weight as Danish acts. This allows each territory to tailor policies and regulations to their unique needs, geographic realities, and economic priorities. But despite their autonomy, certain things continue to remain under the jurisdiction of the Danish central government. These typically encompass core aspects of a sovereign state: constitutional matters, foreign policy, defense, the Supreme Court system, and monetary policy. However, even in these areas, there is a strong emphasis on cooperation and consultation. For instance, while Denmark conducts foreign policy for the entire realm, representatives from the Faroese and Greenlandic governments are often included in Danish delegations for international discussions, particularly on matters that directly affect their interests, such as fishing rights or Arctic affairs. Both territories also send to elected representatives each to the Danish parliament, providing them with a direct voice in the central parliament. Economically, both the Faroe Islands and Greenland maintain strong yet distinct ties with Denmark. Denmark provides significant annual block grants to both territories, which are crucial for their public budgets and help maintain their welfare systems, similar to Denmark's own. However, there is a clear intention for these grants to decrease as the territories develop their own economies and assume more financial responsibility for the devolved areas. Both the Faroe Islands and Greenland are heavily reliant on the fishing industry, making their economies susceptible to fluctuations in fish stocks and global markets. Efforts are continuously being made to diversify their economies, with Greenland, in particular, exploring opportunities in mining for valuable mineral resources and tourism. A notable distinction also exists in their relationship with the European Union. While Denmark is a member of the EU, neither the Faroe Islands nor Greenland are. The Faroe Islands opted out when Denmark joined the European Community in 1973, reflecting a desire to maintain full control over their rich fishing grounds. Greenland, which initially joined with Denmark, subsequently left in 1985 after gaining home rule, driven by similar concerns regarding fisheries policy. This further underscores their autonomy within the kingdom. Today, the entire Kingdom of Denmark is home to just a little over 6.1 million people total. But this number is not spread equally. In fact, it's heavily tilted towards Denmark proper with about 6 million people, leaving just over 50,000 people each for the Faroe Islands and Greenland. This makes Greenland specifically the least densely populated region in the entire world. So, Denmark is secretly huge, at least as far as the Kingdom of Denmark is concerned. But because of a series of autonomy bills, the actual country of Denmark is still quite small. Greenland and the Faroe Islands are their own entities mostly. Speaking of Europe, this week I'm in the Netherlands and also Belgium. Kind of both actually, because I'm exploring the bizarre town with one of the craziest borders in the entire world, Barlherdo and Barlnissol. And you should come join me over on my travel channel. I hope you enjoyed learning all about Denmark's hidden size. If you did, be sure to check out this video all about why Europe might freeze in the future. Thanks for watching. See you next time.